Morning peeps, good morning everyone. How's everyone doing? Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget as well to like and share the vids. All right, let's talk about the scoring, or should I say the scorecard in the Lawrence Okolie, Billam Smith fight. The majority of you seem to be okay with the 116-107 and the 115-108. The conversation surrounds the 112-112 scorecard. Obviously, I didn't watch the fight live. I was at the Mauricio Lara Lee Wood fight. Andy from Boxing News was behind me, and he was giving me like a running commentary of what was going on. And when I heard of the 3 knockdowns and the points deducted, when you hear 112-112, you're like, okay, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And you guys know what I'm like when it comes to scoring. I'm like, if it's so controversial, that judge needs to be brought in front of the board, and he needs to explain, or she needs to explain, how that scorecard came about. It can't just be a case of that's the score. If it's so a big swing, and it was a big swing because 2 judges had it close. 116-107, 115-108. That seems to make sense. Again, you take the knockdowns into consideration. You take the points deductions into consideration. That seems to make sense. So how was Judge B came about 112-112? A lot of you online were talking about it as well. At 112-112 is a disgrace. There was someone online that I respect a lot, and they said, I can see 112-112, and I was like, really? Again, this person's normally quite on point. So I thought, you know, I'm going to go home and watch it. I know a lot of you were saying it's the worst fight you've seen in years, but I thought, you know, I'm going to put myself through it, and I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to score it. I don't think a lot of people score fights. I don't score fights. I'm watching them. I don't really. There are some times where I've got my pen and pad in front of me, and then sometimes when I'm scoring, especially if I think a fight's going to go to points, like there's some fights where you think, okay, this is going to go points because neither are punchers, they're more boxers. And you think, okay, this is going to go points, so let me score it. But most times I'm just like, you guys are just feet up, most times with a drink next to me, and I'm watching a fight. And I think that's what the majority of fight fans do. They don't bring out a pad and actually score it round for round and take everything that happened into that round into consideration. I did that last night. It was boring. It was hard at times, but I scored it round for round. I even put a thread on my Twitter page of how I scored each round as well, and why I gave that round to whatever boxer I gave it to. I'm going to say from the jump, Billam Smith won that fight for me. I scored it, and this is going to blow your mind. I scored it 113-112 Billam Smith. So what I'm basically telling you is I can see 112-112 easily. In fact, it's not easily, but I can see how a judge would get 112-112. And look, I know a lot of you might say, but Adi, you're a Lawrence Okolie fan. You're going to do this. You're going to try and... No. Billam Smith fan as well. If you watch my preview video, I said I know both guys, and it was actually a difficult fight for me because I like both guys as well. Massive respect for what Billam Smith's done. I like Lawrence Okolie. I've had Okolie in the studio. I've spoken to him outside the studio. I think he's a great guy. I think Billam Smith's a great guy as well. You can clearly see that both of them get on with each other. There was no hostilities after the fight or even before the fight. But I scored it 113-112. The reason that I think there is a big swing between all the judges, or at least 2 of the judges and that 1 judge, is because a few of the rounds are very, very difficult to score. A few are very, very difficult. Now, the rounds in question, there was a round where, there was a few rounds, but there's round 5, I think, where Lawrence Okolie is deducted a point. I had Okolie winning that round, but I think I gave it to Billam Smith anyway in my scorecard. But I can understand how if said judge who gave it 112-112 had Okolie winning that round, he scores that round 9-9 in his head, as opposed to what the majority of us fight fans do and scored it 10-8 Billam Smith, because you have Billam Smith winning the round plus a point deduction. And then there's the swings of knockdowns. There were 3 knockdowns in that fight. Now, most times a knockdown round's a 10-8, right? It's very, very rare that it's anything above a 10-8. I think a couple of those knockdown rounds weren't a 10-8. I think they were a 10-9. In fact, Lawrence Okolie is quite unfortunate because one of the knockdowns wasn't a knockdown. One of them weren't a knockdown. But again, by default, because the guy gets the knockdown, you score it a 10-8. I didn't. I gave it a 10-9 to Chris Billam Smith. It's, again, this is rare. Doesn't normally happen. But as an example, what fight? Pacquiao Cotto. Pacquiao got a knockdown in round 3 of that fight. Cotto won that round. Cotto was winning that round, but Pacquiao got the knockdown. Now, 2 of the judges on that, very dodgy judges as well, Dave Moretti and Adelaide Bird, so not the best examples. But 2 of those judges gave that round to Pacquiao 10-9 as opposed to 10-8, which is what you normally give a knockdown round to. If someone wins that round or has won that round but suffered the knockdown, it isn't automatic you give it 10-8. Sometimes you can go 10-9. And I think Chris Billam Smith won the knockdown rounds, maybe 10-9 as opposed to 10-8. Do you see where I'm going with all this? So when you look at it like that, I can see how you can come about 112. Again, look, I know it's crazy. I know. I even got my scorecard here. And I watched a couple of the rounds back. I did, because I was like, oh, Addy, be careful. So look, I gave Lawrence Okolie the first 3 rounds. I did 10-9, 10-9, 10-9. First 3 rounds, I thought Okolie won it. I don't think that's controversial, by the way. I think he won the first 3 rounds. The 4th round, 10-8. I think that was the knockdown round, if my mind serves me right. Or it might have been the point deduction round. But anyway, round 5 is where I gave it 10-8 Billam Smith. But I'm thinking the judge that gave it 112 gave it 9-9. Because again, like a point deduction or a knockdown, especially a knockdown is what I think is really confusing people. Sorry, a point deduction is what's really confusing people, because I think most people, a point deduction, you're thinking, oh, it's a 10-8 round, then Chris Billam Smith. It's correct. No, not at all. Lawrence Okolie was winning that round, just got a point deducted. So it's a 9-9. It's a 9-9. So it's those rounds. It's the ones that are 9-9s and the ones that are 10-9 Billam Smith as opposed to 10-8 Billam Smith is where you get a big swing. So judges that gave it 116-107 and 115-108 have clearly given those rounds 10-8 Billam Smith. The other judge has clearly given those rounds 9-9 and 10-9 and found rounds for Okolie. I actually don't think, and this might be a bit controversial, but watching that fight back again, I don't think Chris Billam Smith won many rounds outright. I really don't. I thought Lawrence landed the bigger shots. I thought Lawrence's style is awful. I've already done a video on that, but I thought Lawrence landed way more. I think he was the aggressor in the fight as well, but Chris Billam Smith got the knockdowns. So those rounds that automatically boxing fans have in their head, because a lot of people tweeted me, have in their head as, oh, that's 10-8 round that day. It's not. Go and watch the fight. It wasn't always a 10-8 round. Not saying that Chris didn't win the rounds, but maybe it was a 10-9. And those point deducted round, maybe they were 9-9s as opposed to 10-8 Chris Billam Smith. And that's where you get a big swing. That's where you get it. But look, I scored it, as I said, I scored it 113-112. The right man in the end won just. But I'm more leaning to the guy that scored it 112-112 as opposed to the other guys that got it 116-107, 115-108. But I can actually see, and I don't normally do this, but I can actually see how both sides might be right. Because there was a couple of swing rounds there which are very, very crucial in the scoring of this fight. Because those swing rounds either give the round by 2 points to Chris Billam Smith, or some of them could be even. And then you can understand how the swing happens. I thought I'd just explain it that way to you. I know it's boring, and I apologize because we don't want to do some boring videos, but I needed to watch the fight. Because again, if it wasn't for that tweet of saying I can see 112-112, then I wouldn't have even done this. But having scored it myself, 113-112, Chris Billam Smith, I can 100%. And another controversial thing as well. What round did I gave round 9, 10-10. I've rarely happens. There's some things in that fight that rarely happen in boxing. But they happen in boxing. They're very rare. They're very rare, but they happen. A knockdown not being a 10-8, being a 10-9. A point deducted not being a 10-8, being a 9-all. A draw round, 10-10. It's very rare, but with me watching it back, I can see how that judge gave it 112, 112. I'm going to actually go and look at, this is very boring homework I'm about to do, but I'm actually going to go and look at that judge's previous scorecards. I think that judge, I think he's actually a very good judge. Honestly, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think he actually has watched, he's watching that fight properly. And look, again, some of you will say, Addy, you're saying this because you're an Okolie fan, and I get that. Look, I'm not going to debate you guys, but I think that judge has actually scored that nearly spot on. Guys, I watched that fight back last night, knowing the result, in my in my front room, and I was watching it properly. And I was like, 1 second, okay, that's Okolie's. That's tight. Oh, that's Billam Smith. Oh, that's a draw. That's not a 10-8. That's a 10-9. I was doing it that way, and I'm telling you, I got 130 and 112. Just saying, don't come for me, please. Don't come for me. All right, let's see what else there is to talk about, because that is quite boring, but I think it's important. Deontay Wilder will make decisions on next fight in coming weeks, says Malik Scott. Everyone else seems to be wanting a summer fight. Deontay Wilder is almost a bit like Tyson Fury, has mentioned so many names, or at least Malik Scott has, in the last few weeks, and nothing. I don't understand why we're not just going to go straight into Andy Ruiz. I'm not understanding what's going on. My only thing is, I think Tyson Fury said that Andy Ruiz was asking for way too much money for their proposed fight, and I just wonder if maybe they've looked at the numbers. Deontay Wilder didn't do anything against Helenius numbers wise, and nor did Andy Ruiz against Luis Ortiz. Look, them against each other is better because it's a better dance partner for both, but I think the money they want and the money or the guarantees on offer, just a million miles apart. A million miles apart. And I think maybe that's why that fight ain't happening. For Deontay Wilder, I mean, look, there's so many matchups he can have. But again, it might just come down to money. I mean, these guys have been paid well recently, very well. And I almost feel like they think that, and this is maybe speaking out of turn here, but I almost feel like they think that's the norm. Like that's what we're going to get paid going forward. No, it depends who you're fighting. And I do think a Ruiz Wilder fight does good numbers, but maybe not to pay them what they want. Anything else? What's this? Delphine Pursoon outpoints Bo Meyer Shin, remains mandatory challenger to undisputed champ Baumgardner. She's a menace. She is an absolute menace. I did one of her fights. Where was I? Dubai for the undercard. Floyd Mayweather, Deji. Sometimes you got to get that work, people. And she punched her opponent after she had knocked her opponent down, then just punched her a couple of times. Or was it way after the bell? I can't remember what it was, but it was so late anyway. She got disqualified and fucking went on a rampage backstage. Like no one could control her. She will cause Baumgardner some problems, some serious problems. She's just a beast. Not technically not great, but as an iron chin, and just has this will to just keep on coming forward. You've got to be able to dent her. Guess who can dent her? Baumgardner. Katie Taylor on Chantel Cameron rematch. Revenge would be very, very sweet. Look, she's a fighter. And it's funny because as much as I'm saying things like, stop fighting, you're done. She's a fighter. I'm not a fighter. She's a fighter. This is what they do. She'll look at that fight. She'll think, okay, there's a few things that she can work on, things that she can improve on. I spoke to Chantel Cameron. Hopefully I'm allowed to say this, but Chantel Cameron said those punches, nothing. That's when she said she realized that she got hit in the first round, and it literally, and think about first round is when Katie Taylor's fresh, and it was nothing. And that's when she realized, I can just walk through your punches. And that's why she was able to keep on going for 10 rounds, nothing. So Chantel will happily fight her at 135, 140, whatever. Ryan Garcia to Rolly Romero. You asked for it. Let's get it. Boy, Romero is just getting gifts, isn't he? He really is. I mean, he kind of talked himself into the Gervonta Davis fight, got paid, name stays out there, handled defeat quite well, I thought, didn't run away. The last fight out, Tony Weeks, we don't even need to talk about that. It really should be him versus O'Hara Davis, I think. But, I mean, look, Ryan Garcia is just a much bigger fight. Ryan will want this fight at 140. It will do good numbers, very good numbers. because both of them talk a lot of shit. Ryan's stock is really high, regardless of defeat. Romero's stock's high as well. Makes sense. Okolie, I will definitely be pushing for a rematch with Chris Billam Smith. Yeah, of course, he should. Again, go on the scorecards. What I did anyway. Look, I fully understand if you don't agree with them, but base it on that. It wasn't that. Lawrence, I want to say Lawrence lost the fight as opposed to Chris winning it, but that's disrespectful. Chris definitely won the fight, but Lawrence will look back and think, I could be so much better. But so will Chris, I guess. Eddie Hearn hits back at Bob Arum. Top Rank are completely finished. ESPN contract gone. This doesn't help in making fights. It really doesn't. Eddie can't help himself, can he? But this surely doesn't help. You want to make the fights and then this happens. So those kind of cross-platform fights are always going to be very, very difficult. You know what it is, yeah? Eddie shouldn't... I mean, look, Bob says things, but Eddie should almost understand that Bob's like an elder man. Bob's an OG of this business. Like when I think of promoting, I think of Bob and Don King. The others as well. That's what I think of. So there's almost like a respect that Eddie should have there, regardless of what Bob says to him. Bob's in his 90s. Bob's been doing this 65 years. Anyone that's been doing it that long, regardless if they are a bit of a loose cannon, you just got to respect and just don't even respond to what he says. Do you know what I mean? Like, even Eddie's dad, Barry, would have a huge amount of respect for Bob. And Barry's been in this game for a long time. Sometimes you just leave it alone. You leave it alone. Luis Alberto Lopez wanted to prove he's a true warrior, a true champion. This is what his manager says. Yeah, he's incredible. He really is. And like, I'll put my hands up. Both hands. Didn't know too much about this kid 2 years ago. Certainly do now. What a problem he is at featherweight. Big problem. He's got a very awkward style. Clearly he's got some pop. And he punches when he sits on them, which he rarely does because he's always on his toes moving around. Seems to be a very nice guy, humble guy as well. A lot of like for him. A lot of like. To go into the backyard of two guys that have support that is very, very intimidating in Michael Conlan and Josh Warrington in silence, both support like that. Mate. He says it here, I'm coming for all the champions. I want all their belts. So he could. The biggest problem for him is someone like a Komatov who doesn't have a belt. That Uzbeki, horrible fighter, as in horribly good. Anything else? Alexis Rocha, I've not seen this fight. Drops and stops Anthony Young in the 5th round. Well done. I like how they're building him, Alexis. When you think of the top dogs at 147, obviously we have the top dogs. And then just below that, I guess most people are saying Boots and Virgil Ortiz, although Virgil Ortiz's name is he needs to fight. But then just below that, it probably is Alexis Rocha, and he's probably the next in line. He's doing so well after he got beat by Rashidi Ellis. He's built himself up. I think that's 7 or 8 wins since that Let's have a look. I think it's 7 or 8 wins since the Rashidi Ellis defeat. Hasn't gone hiding. Has taken fights that, some might deem a bit risky. People come in and my box record's down. Just as I was going to. But I think it is 6 or 7. But yeah, good fighter. I like him a lot. All right. Anything else before we stop? I think that is it. All right, guys, girls, peace and love.